Welcome to Sib Spot. Today's featured Reddit stories are from PettyRevenge. Story 1 today is by Undercover Pretzel. A customer screamed at me once, so now I eat his favorite food. When I was a university student, I worked in a little supermarket for over a year. I was 19 at the time, and since UK minimum wages are age-based, I was making very little. We had a really complicated machine for printing and cashing lottery tickets, and any corrections and refunds had to be signed off by the manager, who was never around when we needed him. Cashing one ticket alone took something like 15 steps. It was wild. So, for the first few weeks, I was quite slow at it in order to avoid making any mistakes. Well, on my second day there, an old guy turned up, and in addition to some food, he wanted a few lottery tickets. He didn't seem to appreciate my lack of speed and leaned in to about 8 inches away from my face to scream, "Yes!" when I tried to check if the numbers I was about to print off were correct. In retrospect, it really wasn't that big of a deal, but I was young and very smart, so his screaming and towering over me was enough to make me feel upset and afraid. He looked very pleased with himself for making the young girl earning a few pounds an hour tremble with fear. I'd already had a bit of retail experience under my belt from a prior job, but that day I cried in the employee bathrooms for the very first time. The job was not great, so I was brought to tears by customers a few more times during my time there, but I was broke and a fast learner, so I was always available for overtime. I ended up working 45 to 55 hours a week, and the guy turned out to be a regular, which meant that he had absolutely known I was new. And I got to serve him often over the next year or so. Joy. I also got the hang of things and did pretty much everything else there, from training others, keeping the refrigerator's temperature log, ordering stock, logging and clearing waste, expired items and those with broken seals, to reducing items which had reached their sell-by date, 25% off at 9 a.m., 50% off at 12 p.m., and finally 75% off at 4 p.m. Well, one benefit was that I learned a few things about the miser who screamed at me, like how he was nasty to everyone working there, especially the younger ladies, how he was retired and seemingly not very well off, and how he appeared to keep track of food sell-by dates and would regularly turn up after certain meat-based items had been reduced for the final time. Now, there's absolutely nothing wrong with being old or on a budget, but it's always a bad idea to scream at people because you're having a bad day and they're not allowed to defend themselves, especially the ones who handle your food. The other benefit was that because I was working full-time, I was the one serving him 99% of the time, which gave me ample opportunities to deliver my petty revenge. And it was going to be a slow burn, like cooking a frog, as they say. Being a broke university student, I figured I could both stick it to him and save myself a bit of money, since food price reductions stacked with employee discount. He never screamed at me again, but for 10 months, I hid all of his nearly expired favorites behind the dairy items and purchased them for myself once he'd left in a huff after finding them gone. I didn't even care for sausages all that much, but I regularly ate something called toad in a hole out of sheer spite, and the vile git probably managed to buy reduced sausages maybe 5 times in 10 months. He got visibly more and more upset over time because other shoppers had seemingly caught on to his strategy. I always nodded sympathetically. "Sorry, we've just sold the last ones. Maybe try again later in the week." I actually rather like toad in a hole now, and have it as a special revenge treat. It reminds me of that time I cooked a frog for nearly a year. Don't scream at the people who handle your food. That's pretty petty revenge, though. I'm glad you found a way to get back at this old, miserly person. Old is fine. Being on a budget is fine. Being ornery and nasty to people, not so fine. Our next story is by Dad's Milk 420. Old guy at the state fair yelled at a little girl for standing in front of the butter sculpture, so I took revenge for her. This happened last summer. Like the title says, I was at the state fair looking at the butter sculpture. This old dude is standing next to me recording as it spins around because the sculpture has 2 different sides to it. This little girl, maybe 3 if I had to guess, runs up to it and presses her face and hands against the glass, all excited. I laughed because I found it cute. I remember being young and that excited for silly things. But the old dude next to me immediately starts yelling. Specifically, he said, "Jesus Christ, get out of the way." And keep in mind, this girl's not even tall enough to mess with his precious video. If anything, he should have been happy to catch a genuine state fair moment, but nope, apparently in his mind he deserves to get completely uninterrupted video. The mom awkwardly apologized and pulled her daughter back. I was immediately effing livid, though. As soon as it got to the point that the butter sculpture was turning to the side he hadn't recorded, I slowly walked in front of him and past his camera so that I blocked all the important stuff. As I was walking away, he goes, "You're a real jerk, you know that?" And I shot back, "Dude, what does that make you? You just yelled at a little girl because you needed your video that bad." He huffed and puffed and goes, "Well, you're still a jerk." I just laughed and kept walking away at that point. Made eye contact with the mom before I left, though, and she had a huge smile on her face, gave me a nod, and mouthed, "Thank you." One of the most satisfying moments of my life, honestly. Okay, I have never seen a butter sculpture at a state fair, and I am totally going to Google this afterwards. I encourage you guys to do the same. Hopefully it's not something inappropriate, because for all I know, I'm going to come across a story someday that has butter sculpture, and it's going to turn out to be something that's not safe for work when I do a search for it. I can't promise that's not going to happen here, so I'm going to Google it later. You guys, if you've never seen one before, are welcome to do that at your own peril. Down in the comments was a cute little exchange by many of the people. First by Digital Graffiti CA. "I like you. You're good people." Under that by Motionless Traveler. "Heck yes, some a-holes are good people. Love it." Underneath that by Lashless Mind. "Constructive jerking." And finally underneath that by Digital Graffiti CA again. "Positive toxicity." Another way to put this, I think, is not all heroes wear capes. Our last story today is by King F. the Eyesores. The completely legal way to mess with someone's food. I work in a cafeteria in a factory, so almost all my customers are regulars and I get to know what they like and don't like. There's one woman on nights who absolutely hates peas, won't even try to eat around them. She loves any kind of chicken soup and is always a little upset if there are peas in it. Last week we had a chicken soup with no peas, but she still got mad because we had the noodles for it on the side so they wouldn't turn into mush in the soup. It's how we do noodle soups. You add the noodles to your bowl and then add the soup. Today we have chicken and wild rice soup, which I know she's crazy for. I had to add it to make sure we have enough for midnights. I don't have time to chop up carrots like the guys on Days. Guess I'll just have to use frozen peas and carrots. Oh well, can't really cater to one person while serving 100. No soup for you! That is an excellent Seinfeld reference. Thank you, sir, or ma'am, for posting that. King, without the O in there. Your name was really hard for me to try to pronounce. King F. the Eyesores. But yeah, the Soup Nazi episode of Seinfeld was one of the great ones. And yes, I'm showing my age now by being somebody who grew up watching Seinfeld when I was in high school. Thank you for bringing back some memory there. Our stories for today have come to a close. Until we meet again, have a splendid day.